You got to get that serotonin running. And then secondly, nature. We are animals. We need to be in a position to turn off that human side of us and just be our animal selves, if you would.
Leadership ultimately comes down to people, right? It's coming down to having great conversations, authentic conversations, connecting with people, helping people feel seen, valued, safe, and helping people succeed.
You always seem to arrive with a passion and an enthusiasm and a joy. What is it in your life that brings you joy these days? When you look at your life and think about what brings you joy, tell us a little bit about that.
There with my grandchildren, watching their fascination. And even though I've been through it all, I know how to walk and talk and use my digits and stuff like that. But seeing them, the perceptual organization they're doing for the first time and the mechanical operations they're doing with their hands for the first time is wondrous. And in that wonder, I find joy.
Welcome to JOY², Live with Joy. This is the podcast where we get to explore the power of joy, purpose, passion, and fun, and how joy, when practiced intentionally, transforms how we live, work, and lead. I'm your host, Greg DeCoker, and I believe that when you live with joy, everything gets better, and I mean everything. And this isn't just about feeling good. It's about unlocking joy as a resource, one that fuels better leadership, meaningful work, and thriving lives. Each week, we share the stories, the insights, and the sparks that ignite more joy, because joy is contagious, it's powerful, and it belongs to all of us. So lean in, stay curious, and let's create more joy together. This is JOY², brought to you by Essentia Group. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the JOY² Live with Joy podcast, where we explore leading, working, and living with more joy intentionally. I'm your host, Greg DeCoker, and every month I'm joined by my good friend, leadership expert, founding title sponsor, and co-host, Ray Carvelas, CEO of Essentia Group. And today's a conversation I have genuinely been looking forward to. Several months ago, Ray invited both of us to speak during his Lessons in Leadership Roundtable. Tim spoke about the courage to care, and I spoke about the hidden power of joy in leadership. And although we approached leadership from different perspectives, I couldn't help noticing how often our messages intersected. At the heart of both conversations was the same idea. People flourish when leaders intentionally create environments where they feel safe, valued, and inspired to do their best work. Our guest today has spent more than 3 decades studying exactly how that happens. Ray, I'll hand it over to you to introduce Tim and get us started. Tim, it's such a pleasure to have you join us today.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. It's sure is an honor and a pure joy to be introducing Dr. Timothy Ludwig to our audience. Timothy is one of the leading voices in behavioral safety and organizational behavior management. As a distinguished graduate professor at the Appalachian State University, he has spent more than 3 decades helping organizations apply behavioral science to improve safety, quality, leadership, and performance. His work bridges rigorous academic research with practical real-world application, including safety and quality improvement initiatives with organizations around the globe. He's also the author of influential books on behavioral safety and safety culture, and is a respected speaker, advisor, and educator in the field. This year, in fact, Dr. Ludwig was named the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Organizational Behavior Management Network, which recognizes individuals who have fundamentally advanced the understanding or application of behavioral principles in organizational settings. His academic work, consulting practice, and international speaking have made him a trusted authority for leaders seeking practical, evidence-based approaches to strengthening safety and workplace culture. I personally have known Tim for almost 2 decades now, and I got to know him when we implemented what I call a life-changing people-based safety program at a global mining, engineering, and construction company that I led. And over the years, Tim has been a colleague, an advisor, and a mentor to me, and I'm happy today to call him a friend. Tim, I'm delighted to have you share some of your insights. It is a real joy to have you here. And when I think back on on the engagements I had with you initially in more of a professional capacity, you always seem to arrive with a passion and an enthusiasm and a joy. Like is so evident. And I think people that I've worked with who have worked with you have had the same sort of takeaways. You've had the same impact on them, that you seem to live and lead and do things with that joy and enthusiasm. So happy to have you here today. And you maybe not as busy as you used to be. I think you may be doing a little less these days, Tim. But certainly you still have a busy life with the university and the work that you're doing at the Appalachian State University, plus your consulting work. What inspired you when I asked you about joining us for this conversation? What prompted you to say yes and be a part of this?
Oh, well, first of all, I want to thank both you and Greg for having me aboard. This is going to be a joyful conversation. It's going to be fun. But frankly, just out of my respect for you, Ray, our history together, your interests both vocationally around, protecting workers, around leadership, but also your avocation with your religion, with your work with townships in South Africa, which I know is continuing in Canada. I wanted to have this conversation with you probably as much as you wanted to have with me.
If you look at your life right now, I know that you've had some grandchildren join the fold, and your father has also been in a similar field and is a deacon at your church. What is it in your life that brings you joy these days? When you look at your life and think about what brings you joy, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, when you get older, your brain's capacity to create the neurotransmitters, the hormones that produce emotions such as joy or satisfaction or happiness and the like, they truncate a bit, as opposed to, remember the days of your youth when like everything was fascinating and joyful. And and then also the simple historical fact that you've lived, in my case, 63 years. Not much is new. And so the fantastical part of life, and that's not totally true because I'm quite curious what happens next, obviously. So I find myself challenged at this later, developmental stage of life to, kind of create the brain chemistry that I would say that is joyful. But you put your finger on it. There's points when I'm not even trying, and that would be the points where I'm there with my grandchildren watching their fascination. And even though I've been through it all, I know how to walk and talk and use my digits and stuff like that. But seeing them build that competency and the perceptual organization they're doing for the first time, and the mechanical operations they're doing with their hands for the first time, is wondrous. And in that wonder, I find joy, right? I guess that would be the same as you mentioned with how I might present myself with clients. It's seeing their challenges and having them experience the discovery, the victories, the challenges for the first time. It's almost like seeing the joy through them, I guess, would be my answer to that. So, on a daily basis, I ride my bike, get the endorphins going, do my yoga, stretch out to really kind of help my body be in a position as best as possible to experience that. But I think what life presents you are opportunities to see it through others at this stage.
I agree. I just wanted to add in, I know Ray's known you a lot longer. You guys have had an amazing relationship, and I've been privileged to kind of witness it in a few different times. And I agree with Ray just in my interactions with you. I mean, you've got this 100% track record of just showing up happy, just showing up joyful. And it doesn't seem like you really have to try. But are there those times like where it is like you feel like you are being intentional, or like, for example, like what if you're not experiencing joy, like, are there things that you do to kind of shift into it or shift out of those joyful experiences? I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
So, yeah, I have found myself again, at this later stage of life, it's just not like popping up as a, and I found myself here on my deck looking at the mountains going, okay, where's it at? Where's it at? It's got to be there. And I'll tell you what, it's not here.
Yeah.
It's not on technology. We spend most of our time.
Yeah.
And if I'm not finding it, I find myself working harder, writing more, trying to conceive of more in this technology platform. And I'm becoming increasingly aware that the pursuit of the reward that you get in your career or you get with a client, or in a podcast for that matter, right? Is a different system. The gratification you get from the things of this world, the things of a vocation, the things of a career, is different than what I would define as joy. It's certainly dopamine in the brain, right? It's driving you, but I can get that from playing my stupid game here. But it's quintessentially different than the moments with my grandchildren or with my wife or with friends, or the moments where I'm in the woods taking a hike and having the inspirational thoughts, the creative thoughts that I then reflect on and go, oh, that was pretty cool. Good thought. And then joy, right? So I think to answer your question in a roundabout way, to be intentional is to shape your environment in such a way that allows your natural processing, natural neurological chemical processing to experience, which is a natural animal experience and natural human experience as we define what's happening to us. We're the only ones in the animal world that call it joy, but shaping your environment with screens and the like, I think it can give you the dopamine rush, the accomplishment, the reward, right? Which is heady, but you're always pursuing it. The walk in the woods, the breeze on my face on my bike, the child's face, just putting yourself in that position, right, is probably the answer to your question, Greg.
I love it. It almost sounds like the way you described it is like it's in you. Like, I mean, you come across as someone who, you carry joy wherever you go. Like it's, they had this like blood donor commercial in Canada. It's like they say it's in you to give blood. It's in you to give. Well, I mean, I think I think joy is in us, not just for us to experience on our own. I think it's a beautiful feeling.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt
No.
you, Joe, but so we got these different networks in our brain.
Yeah.
I'm a psychologist, so I geek out on this stuff, and we have what's called the default mode network.
Okay.
When that's on, we're thinking about ourselves, we're judging ourselves. It's the default mode of us, right? Boom. Buddhist monks, for example, while they're meditating or while we're doing our yoga and the like, and we turn off that processing, which turns off this area of our prefrontal cortex, which kind of is reviewing our behavior and judging it and talking to ourselves and labeling things and the like. And I think if we had a neurologist in here that wasn't just a hack, they would say it probably has something to do with that. You're turning off the part of your brain that's judging yourself, that's planning the next thing, that's executor to your analyzing your environment, and just being in a state, instead of doing your being, right? And I think that's the default mode setting. That's the natural setting. Now, kitty cat. My cat used to be sitting over there. It can have moments of great excitement and jumping around, but most of the time it's just sitting there quietly, passively. I think it's just the default mode of animals. Us humans, the reasons our brain got so big, it's actually 3 times the size of our skull. It had to be, God had to fold it up into its creases here. The reason our brain got so big is because of social animals, and in order to talk to each other and communicate and then cooperate in our human ways, we developed this frontal lobe, which is our crowning, pardon the pun, the crowning achievement that also can plan for the future and tell us stories of things that don't exist yet, cause anxiety and the like. And a lot of our vocation, a lot of our work time is using this thing. That's probably what it's being paid for. And that's what's being rewarded in our society, probably, and rewarded monetarily in our jobs and the like. I know I've been one captured by that allure of the reward that this frontal lobe can give me, this intellect can give me to plan and to adjust and to analyze and to teach, and thinking that that's where maybe joy, the construct of joy may come from. But I'll tell you what, when I'm in the middle of teaching, I'm not actually thinking about it anymore. I'm just listening to what's coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
That's a joyful experience. And the moment I go, oh, that's cool, then I start thinking about what I'm talking about. It's gone in that moment. So,
Tim, that's so interesting. You are an academic, and it's not often that we see academics that can really translate the work you do into real practical delivery of that academia, and the fact that you can do that, but also how you relate to those frontline workers. And I've seen how you relate to those frontline supervisors and frontline workers in such a unique way. And I'd love to learn a little bit more about, because when you're connecting with them, you're connecting with them with that, again, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, with such enthusiasm and such joy in terms of the work you're doing, because the work you do really is life-changing. It's life-saving. We're saving people's lives through the work that you do. So tell us a little bit about how that makes you feel when you're in the front line, whether it's in North America or in Africa somewhere, working with those frontline workers and seeing some of the conditions they live in. Tell us about how that makes you feel in terms of doing that with joy.
yeah. Well, first of all, they're far more interesting than you are. The CEOs of the world. I mean, once you get to the executive level, there's like a lobotomy that happens, and everybody starts using big words that don't mean anything, and you lose touch of what, where the value is created or the risks are taken, and where you have, I think, the opportunity to indeed change lives. So, I'll tell you a quick story that Ray was involved in, if you let me, Greg, and Ray may want to cut this out, but we'll just go with it. So yeah, we implemented the behavioral safety process in Ray's company in South Africa, and they call me back on occasions to give it a reboot or to fluff things up a bit. And we were trying to deploy to more sites than the ones that we had originally started out with. And I realized I'd been there and I'd talked to his executive a couple times, and they weren't doing the stuff that they're part of it. And so I decided, well, we're going to take them out in the field. We're going to drag them out to a mining site and show them what we're talking about. So we dragged out of the air-conditioned offices in Johannesburg. We dragged them out to, Boysendal. Man, they had this conveyor that was like a ski resort thing, and all these engineers were geeking out about that. Then they got in the modular unit. Ray introduced me, and we started our presentation. They're all sitting here like this. Ray's seen this picture. They're all sitting here like this. His chief of operations was like half asleep, right? But once we got done with that, their job was to go out and interact with the workforce. Go out and watch for a little bit, so you're seeing the context of where the worker is, identifying what they're doing safe and some risks they may be taking, ask them to take a break and then have a structured discussion with them. And so we did that for a couple hours, and then we went back to that modular unit, and the excitement and the energy that was in that room was palpable. I got a video of it. It's palpable. It's just palpable. Going into the evening and into the next day. And that taught me something, that you're not going to connect with the executive through being smart and, your acumen and things like that. You're going to connect by reconnecting them probably to the reason they got into that field in the first place. Now, if you're an engineer and geeking out about physics and stuff, the human element is what's interacting with that physics. And so, no matter what field you're coming from, the human's interacting with it, even if it's financial. And so, I think the reason why you saw the experience that I have with the frontline workers is I'm going through the same thing, right? I'm learning from them. I figured this is the best classroom in the world. I'm an academic. I'm a schoolboy. I have no skills. And look at these hands. There's no callus at all. I can't. I'll save you the description of me trying to fix my lawnmower the other day. And here are these folks with skills, with lives, with dreams. And I know in the kind of programs, especially in safety, if you don't have the frontline worker, you don't have the culture, you don't
Right.
have. And if you're going to go in and tell them what to do, that ain't going to work. You got to learn from them and allow their energy to run the show. So, I mean, it's a
Yeah.
pleasure. It's simply a pleasure. I'm not trying to be joyful. It's just so cool to hang out with them, you know?
That's part of who you are. It's interesting because it made me think about in a kind of maybe a little bit of an indirect way, that story that I've always said joy is the fastest path to performance. And some leaders will say, well, that's nice, but business is serious, right? So not totally, agreeing. And I would just love to, what would you say to kind of leaders who believe emotions and performance are separate conversations? Because a lot of what you're talking about, or even though you haven't said feelings or emotions, that's what that's how I interpret it. Like what they brought there, what they brought wasn't necessarily emotions, but what they got out of it, they really felt, that, and that you said it was palpable. And I just think sometimes we separate those things when they should be combined.
Oh, that's a great question, Greg. And I am one of those.
Mm.
I'm a behaviorist. I'm a Skinnerian, which means, the observable is where I do my research, is where I do my practice. So I'm one of those folks. So, I'm also human. I'm also experiencing it. And so, part of the benefit of being an academic is you can sit around and think about stuff, right? And so in psychology, the relationship between behavior and emotion has been well known for a while.
Right.
And in the popular fields out there, it can also get muffled because we're all human, we're all experiencing it, and our brain produces a bit of an illusion that we feel our way into thinking about what we want to do. So we feel our way into thinking, and I think our way into doing, and it's actually all different.
Yeah.
It's actually all different. So let me kind of summarize. Sorry, I'm giving you a little intro side
Love
lesson,
it.
but
No, this is amazing.
the way it kind of works, and I'll get deep on you since this is a podcast. We got time, right? Stimulation, what's happening around us, go through our sense organs, right? So let's say we see a worker taking a risk, and we know it could hurt them, right? It goes in our sense organs. We see it, we hear it, whatever. Before the stimulus gets into the parts of our brain that perceive, that see, that hear, before we even think about it, all these sensations go through the limbic system first. The limbic system is your source of emotion. So you feel before you even, let's just say experience, before you perceive. That's useful in survival, right? We were cave people walking around. We have the lion coming out. We don't have to go, what is that? Is that a lion? How do I feel about this? I'm scared. Move your body. Go. No, we just react before we even realize what we're seeing. So, and all animals have this. So then it goes and we perceive, right? We rarely think about our movements. I mean, look at this. I'm moving my hand here. I didn't sit here and go, I'm moving my hand. It just happens. That's because behaviorally, throughout our whole lives, we've been shaped to move our bodies in certain ways based on the stimuli around us. So we tend to just start acting, right? So then we start acting, and we may be in the situation, the person who is taking a risk, right? We may start approaching them, right? But our belly's telling us something. We're scared. It's a scary situation that you get hurt, right? I start moving toward them, and then I ask myself, so cognitively then, that's when the thinking comes in. Why am I moving toward him? What am I trying to do? Then you label the emotion, the feeling that your body created. I must be afraid for him. And then I can think about, I need to talk to him or something like that. So it's a bit, obviously it's the brain, so it's complex. But oddly, emotion is on the front end and then the back end of it. Emotion in the basic physiological sense is your body feeling a certain way, more specifically your belly feeling a certain way, the second brain. That thing called the vagus nerve that wraps all around your belly and all around to it's the only nerve that goes to every part of your brain and every digestive system. And the information that that vagus nerve is sending back and forth is 80% from the belly up. Only 20. So your brain is constantly going to your belly going, what are you feeling? What are you feeling? So when the limbic system gets activated, belly says something that your brain has to interpret. And then the emotion like joy or fear is our cognitive interpretation of how our body feels. So that's my way of knitting in behavioral, kind of empirical science, at least to this date, until we get quantum, and concepts like joy, which are very real human experiences. So when I told you earlier, how do you manifest joy in your life, Tim? My answer was I shape my environment to put myself in a position so that my brain can, or so my body can feel joy, that my brain can interpret it as joy. Right. So, that's a behavioral answer. So when it comes to your bigger question was around leadership, right? Joy leads to performance. I would argue differently.
Okay.
And I'll do it through a story. So I made the distinction earlier about dopamine and I'm doing my work, I'm being successful, I get a rush, I get a reward feeling, right? A lot of people wouldn't call that joy. It's more ego-based. It's, it's me, I kicked ass, let's go. And we pursue that. And that's what dopamine does. Your frontal lobe is a dopamine predictor system. And if I do something, it gets me dopamine, it is going to shape my environment and create urges in my body to go get more dopamine. And we've all been to that point where we're driving to get more dopamine. We're getting further and further away from that thing called joy that we experience as joy. So the workplace is and should be a dopamine production center, right? In order to perform, you need to do these things to produce dopamine, and then you pursue more dopamine and you perform more, and then you get rewarded for it. And I'm sure your leaders will come back to and there's no joy in that, right? This is not about joy. This is about getting dopamine in my workers' brain so they produce more for our shareholders, our stakeholders. But I did a survey once out of a friend who's a fellow colleague here at Appalachian State who's good at creating surveys. I'm not a big survey person, but they asked if we could create a culture survey for this food distribution company that had some 200 retail outlets, grocery stores here in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. And they wanted us to create a culture survey for the employees of this grocery store times 200. Big stores, small stores, successful stores, non-successful stores. We did the survey construction process, with subject matter experts. He created the survey, gave it out to these employees in 200 stores, and then we took the results and we correlated with store performance. And some stores made more money, some stores made less money. And we were able to conclude when we went in front of the owner CEO and his board, when we did our presentation, that, it's a valid survey. We validated it's reliable, blah, blah, blah. And what we found was that the stores that had a standard deviation higher in culture, right? An employee of feeling positive satisfaction in the workplace. And we can ask the question, is that a surrogate for joy or not, right? Those stores that had a standard deviation higher in this cultural metric made $500,000 more in profit a year in the large stores, right? So we announced this. The HR guy who hired us was that's why we got to work on culture. And then the owner and CEO goes, is it, correlation cannot assume causality. So we didn't do a manipulation there. We didn't make one store happy and the other one's not. But he asked a central question and stayed with me a whole career. He goes, are they productive because they're happy, or are they happy because they're in a position to be productive? And so I think beyond the dopamine rush of accomplishment and whatnot, if a leader is able to show that the fruits of all our labor, and I shouldn't actually say that. Let me back that up a bit. If the leader can create an environment for the person to succeed, probably not during their workday, but I think the vocation that they're in and the work they do can be a source of joy, because it is an area where they have an environment they can succeed, right? So, I'm kind of twisting your words around to say, well, leaders' jobs are to create a safe, right? A safe, psychologically safe workplace, one where I have the tools to get done with my job, one that I can do. I can have hard goals, but I can accomplish them. I'm not just chasing the rainbow all the time, and I get feedback. And I think if we shape that environment in such a way that the person could be successful, we're at least not blocking joy at work.
Right.
And Tim, it's so important what you talk about. I mean, you know better than anyone how important that positive recognition is in creating that environment where people love to perform, right? And I think certainly in our industries, that's not used enough, So I can really relate to that. And what came first? Was it the joyful environment that the leader created, or was it the reward? What is creating that overwhelming joy?
You probably need a little bit of both. But the positive feedback is often misconstrued as going and giving a here's a cookie. I give you this plaque. I recognize you in front, but you really get to know the workers. It's when the leader comes and is a fellow human to them, right? You get some time to meet each other as humans and get to know each other better. That's why when I shoved you guys out into the mine at Boisendal, your instructions were to ask the worker questions, not to tell the worker what they did right or wrong. You had to ask questions. The experience for the worker then is, oh, they're interested in me. Right? And a couple of your colleagues actually had workers asking, well, who are you? What do you do? What's it like being here on site? Do you like our site? That kind of stuff. And so then there's, I guess, in some words, they may call that an authentic interaction, right? That is probably more shaping the workplace for a construct like joy than me coming in and going, you're doing a great job. I want to give you this plaque or a raise. And man, here's to your dopamine. I hope you have more in there so I can get more out of you.
I love that, Tim, because it made me think of they're really being interested in the employees, right? And the frontline workers, as opposed to being interesting and just saying, hey, here's a worker we're working on. Here's our strategy. Here's some of the things we're doing. All that stuff's great and all that stuff's important, but they really came in with a different perspective thanks to your leadership there.
Well, they're finding, to our earlier point, the leaders are finding joy in their workers.
Yeah, right.
Right. I mean, we always point to the workers. They're the ones that are, workers are working. They're there. They're just kicking up. They're kicking ass. They're just doing their stuff, right? And at best, they're just hoping you stay out of their way.
Yep. Yeah.
And the boss comes around, oh, dear God, he's going to put me behind, and they're going to put up new rules. They're going to tell me what to do, and, grumble. If we can, I'm kind of riffing here, but I guess I could set up an environment where the workers can experience joy. I'm sorry, where the leaders can experience joy from going to the front line.
Right.
They're going to produce more in the front line, and by virtue of reinforcement, go to the front line more.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot more satisfying, more joyful, more reinforcing than the boardroom.
Yeah. I love that. And I hear that as two things. I don't think it's not that just joy leads to performance or just performance leads to joy. I think it's both. I mean, I think it's a cycle, of course, right? I think it is both. So I need to
took you through the neurology of it. You can see how it is going to.
I need to change my diagram in my website now. Thanks to this conversation.
Sorry.
Or I'll edit out the argument part. But no, I'm kidding. We'll keep it.
Well, it's tough because we as humans, yourself included, experience it, right? And we have to tell ourselves what the mechanisms are. That's what our brain does, right? But our frontal lobe is a master illusionist. This whole vision I got in front of me is just a movie that my frontal lobe's playing. It has nothing to do with what actually, this is just sunlight bouncing off of stuff, right? It's a master illusionist, and it can it can blind us from what might produce joy, right? That dopamine, for example, I think it blocks. So there's a guy named Maslow back in early psychology and humanism, right? And he had the hierarchy of needs, which I called BS for a while as a behaviorist and the like. But then it hit me, and I wrote about this in my first book. It says you need your physiological needs met before you can feel self-esteem, before you can get self-actualized. I kind of summarized, right? The modern world with the kids now, the basic needs below physiological are Wi-Fi and battery life, just to let you know. So, but I had a early experience in my career that flipped that on its edge. And I'll get back to my point here in a second. But so as a behaviorist, I also know how to build programs to help kids with autism and what you used to call mental retardation, we now call intellectually challenged. And so when I worked my way through my doctorate, I worked for a clinic where we had people there. And there's a woman whose name was Violet. And we called her Violent because she would throw food off the table. She was self-injurious. She'd hit herself. And was just she was okay, but not the favorite client. And so one day she stuck her fist through a sheetrock wall, like injured her hand. And then we couldn't just kind of keep her safe. It was time that we needed to intervene. And so the social worker, brand new guy named Bob, he had wild hair and kind of a roving eye and kind of goofy. He calls the staff together. And it was a psychiatrist that was there, and then me, the psychologist, the nutritionist, and the other staff members. And he goes, let's do a round table and talk about how we could help Violet. So the psychiatrist started, and he goes, well, Violet has schizophrenia. She has voices talking to her. That's why she's beating it off. I have her on Halidol. So Halidol, if you're not to pharmaceuticals, were the Quaaludes that some of our friends took in college.
Oh, wow.
Right? They're horse tranquilizers.
Yeah, right.
And so he said, her schizophrenia is getting worse. I'm going to triple her Halidol. And I went, she's not going to loosen it. She's not going to do anything. Just drool. Then it got to me, and I said, well, behaviorally, and autism and things like that. Here's a behavioral program, nutritionist, And it got around to Bob, and Bob goes, I'm not satisfied. Before we do chemical or behavioral, emotional, or whatever, I'm just going to get her to a physician. And he went, and she was deformed, and she had a big hunchback, and took her to a regular doctor. They did X-ray on her, full up, and they found that she had a bar in her leg shattered her ankle when she was young. She was like 40 now, and they put pins in. But she couldn't talk. She was non-verbal, and she was in pain. That the calcium had built up around it, and she was in pain on her left side. And so they cleaned up that area, did surgery. She went through physical therapy. When she came back, she was no longer hitting herself. She came off her Halidol, and she became verbal. She started using words.
Wow.
He didn't stop there. He found out she had cataracts. So they cleaned up the cataracts. And by the time I left, Violent, who I really didn't want to interact with, came up and hugged me and said a full sentence, something I didn't think she had the IQ to do. And I'm not going to tell you what she said because I'll start crying. It was a joyful moment. But then I understood Maslow. Everybody can get self-actualized. Everybody can experience joy, including people with limited, abilities. She was being blocked by pain.
Wow.
And and we had a doctor of medicine there, right? And an almost doctor of behavioral psychology. And here's this funky social worker with wild hair who just stepped back and said, let's just make sure the basics are taken care of. And I think that's the way I perceive the front line. We got to make sure the basics are taken care of. And then they can enjoy their work. But if they don't have the right tools, they don't have good supervision, they don't have a safe environment, they don't understand how they can achieve goals, they don't have a good place to park, for God's sake. And these are all these are all barriers to these higher order experiences like joy and self-actualization. So, in terms of a high performance workplace produces joy, well, not necessarily, right? If it's coming out of people's teeth, pulling teeth. But I think they're both shaped from the same thing, right? They're both shaped from the same thing, and maybe we haven't identified that yet. So I do think they're correlated, but I do agree with that CEO who said, well, is it more of a productive workplace makes joy, or is joy produces a productive workplace?
That's a great question. That'll stay with me for a while as well, for sure.
Yeah. That was quite an experience. Quite an experience.
I'm sure, and it just sounds again, Tim, you built a career and a life around helping other people, and just hearing that story just sort of reinforces that for me. And can you is that a particular point of joy in your life, or is there another story you can tell us about where you've had real complete joy, that sense of full body joy, if I can call it that, in your life?
Well, flying to South Africa is hard, right?
It sure is.
I mean, it is a job. It is a job. I am blessed to be able to experience joy along the front line and with other people, but the full unbridled joy comes from music festivals. So taking a step back neurologically, you got your dopamine, and that's really not a source of joy, but you got this little chemical called oxytocin, right? We get oxytocin when we have sex and we fall in love. That's the love drug. It's the love hormone. Mothers have it when they're having their kid, and when babies breastfeed, both the mom and baby get. When Ray and I shake hands and give each other a smile, we get some oxytocin, right? And if I had to get that and serotonin, mixed together, gives you a nice little joy cocktail, and a little norepinephrine for the get up and go. All three of those are produced with music. I was reading, I was preparing for my class a couple years ago, and I wanted to put a new slide in. And I do a talk on the well-doing of well-being, which is a lot of this content comes from that I've been telling you about, Greg. And I wanted to give it a good ending. And what's this thing on oxytocin? And then sure enough, the data is very clear that if you're having a bit of a deficit in joy, listen to music. It creates these circuits, the rhythm and the like, especially when you're around other people. Create this same feeling. So to answer your question, dancing my butt off to a good jam band at a music festival with a tie-dye shirt and flinging my arms around, unbridled joy.
Good. You also talked a little bit, Tim, about blockages to joy and how leaders can create those. Are there any blockages in your life that block joy for you?
Yeah, I think everybody does. And it's not central to anybody. I think everybody has their own experience. In my case, as I get older, with some foolish behavior in my own youth, bulged discs and the like, headaches and pain, can be a real block. Be a real block. It can really shadow what your body naturally wants to do. Like I said, as you get older, the brain chemistry changes, your ability to produce all this stuff and experience and the like. But yeah, I guess in my case, just the pain and the like. I think money. You're thinking about funding things and the things that you want to do, but also the things you got to do and your obligations. When you go down too far in the 2 a.m, letting your frontal lobe wake up and start planning a dreadful future for yourself, which hasn't even happened yet. You're having anxiety for something that actually hadn't happened yet, and your brain has got you completely convinced that it's going to happen. That's
like the acronym of fear. Sorry to interrupt. It's like fear, false evidence appearing real.
Yeah, exactly.
That's insane.
Kitty cat doesn't have that.
Yeah,
kitty cat doesn't have that. I mean, it has a conditioned fear if you're mean to it and stuff like that, but it doesn't have this ability to think in the future and about terrible things happening. That's why the cats are pretty chill most of the time. My frontal lobe, as you can tell, it's pretty big. It can certainly spice up imaginary futures that can really block, my current joy, my present joy. So again, that's where turning off that part of your brain that thinks about yourself, which Buddhist monks do in meditation, which good tennis players do, when they're playing tennis. which I couldn't do when I played tennis, which meant I had anxiety with every serve, right?
Yeah.
So, your ability to kind of dissociate from the cognitive part of your brain that is your executor, which is what's being rewarded in the rest of your life, right? To go into that animal brain and just kind of enjoy nature and enjoy your body and enjoy the people around you. We're social animals, like I said. So, we get this oxytocin as interacting with other people. So, my salve is, to say pain, is to get in a social setting. And next thing I know, I've gone 2 or 3 hours without, like, oh my gosh, if I've done my stretching beforehand. So I guess that's my answer there, Ray. Just, kind of the human body, the animal body, can get you away
In
sometimes.
other words, we sometimes are our own obstacles to joy. Yeah, and I guess that's true.
I was going to say also too, when you talk about being in a social setting, because I'm similar as well, it's in the same category for me as being of service to people as well. So, right, where you're not making it about you in that moment, right? It's about connecting with other people.
Yeah.
It's about being interested in them, as we talked about earlier. It's about asking questions. It's about supporting them, being them, laughing with them, connecting with them. Yeah, it's beautiful. So
shaping your environment,
yes.
give yourself the opportunity for joy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I just got a text about a happy hour tomorrow.
Perfect timing. That always happens. Every episode, we get the same thing with every guest. No, I'm kidding.
Well, it happened before the podcast.
Okay, well, there you go. There you go.
And just, but still, I mean, it's it's an opportunity. And too many people that suffer from anxiety will cloister themselves,
Yeah.
because the social anxiety is real and it's very debilitating. And the experience of being with other humans, either one-on-one or in my case, larger groups, can really touch. That's why I love my keynotes. I love getting in front of, I teach 300 students at a shot in intro psych, not because I'm the best intro psych professor, it's just because just all that in front of me, I don't know, puts me in my own world. So shaping your environment to get the joy you're seeking.
Tim, it's been an absolute joy talking to you, and you've shared so many insightful things. I've certainly learned another whole bunch of things I've got to think about just from this conversation. So thank you for taking time to chat to us. And if there was maybe one or maybe two things you'd like to leave with our listeners in terms of, creating that environment where joy comes and joy comes through that environment, what would you like to leave with them?
I guess two things come to mind. When you were asking the question, the first thing that came to mind, and a lot of times I have to hear myself say it to understand what I'm saying, so bear with me, is kind of creating space for
Yep.
it. Creating space for it. I think the more cogent advice is to get away from these things,
Yeah.
right?
Fun.
I mean, as I age and as these things got better, I find myself spending way too much. I look at that notification. It tells you how much time you spent on a screen. It's egregious. It's terrible. So you got to make space. And learning personally, and this is fairly recently, to get away from that, right? Get good and bored. Now you got to get that serotonin running. And then secondly, nature. We are animals. We need to be in a position to turn off that human side of us and just be our animal selves, if you would. And, so go out in nature, exercise, and other people are nature, other people are animals. So that socializing piece as well. So make space, and I think you need to be intentional about it. I'm trying to learn how to be intentional about it.
And maybe a way to sum up both of those things is, creating that space and making that space, getting to a point where it becomes second nature. Oh, interesting. Could be something in there. Next episode coming up.
Absolutely. I mean, when people want my time, I give them either times in the morning or the afternoon based on what I want to do, go hiking or biking that day.
Yeah.
So I try to make that space.
That's great.
Right. I mean, you got to execute when you get there, but it's a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, I mean, Tim, this has been such a thoughtful conversation, such a great conversation. And I love how you've taken decades of research and just reminded us that, leadership ultimately comes down to people, right? It's coming down to having great conversations, authentic conversations, connecting with people, helping people feel seen, valued, safe, and helping people succeed, I think is really important. And there's so many moments during this conversation, it really resonated with me. And pretty much all of them, even the quote unquote argument, which wasn't really an argument. It was just a, sharing of opinions, which I love. I mean, that's a great thing. We get to learn here. It's not like we're, Ray and I are doing this because we have all the answers. No, we've got some questions and we've got some curiosity, and we think we're pretty joyful and have some cool ideas, but it was great to hear yours. And also, like, our conversation reinforces something that I deeply believe in, that joy isn't separate from great leadership. It's woven into it, right? It's part of it. So yeah, thanks for sharing your wisdom so generously. Incredible.
One more wrinkle in, if I could.
Yeah,
'cause
of course.
It's burned an idea in my head
Absolutely.
about, we often talk about leaders as someone like in Ray's former position, the CEO in your board, or your managers of a plant or something like that. But the experience that the frontline worker has the most is with their frontline supervision, their frontline leader.
Yeah.
Right. And what we don't ask, what we haven't asked in this podcast, maybe a future one, is where is the quotient of joy in the supervision? That's the hardest job in the world.
Right.
And I do not find joy talking to them because, they've been shaped to be, and people like Ray kind of want them that way. So then I can come in and be authentic and pat everybody on the back. And then I got this hard ass that's going to be driving my dopamine for a while. So as we conclude, that is an area of further conversation, further discovery.
Absolutely.
Because I haven't tapped into that one yet, but I see a lot of miserable supervisors.
Yeah.
And then you talk about, shaping the environment for joy of the frontline worker. That's a bigger component than somebody in a nice outfit coming in with a brand new set of PPE asking questions.
100%. And I think part of it, and I think it's a bigger conversation, but it's how do we redefine managing? People don't like to be managed, like, is it empowering? Is it moving, helping to move them emotionally, helping them to feel something and connect with something that's going to make a difference in their work and in their life? So I think there's lots of different angles, but I think you're right. That's a bigger conversation. Thanks for adding that.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, and thanks for the incredible contribution you continue to make to organizations and leaders around the world and students, and your Lifetime Achievement Award. I get goosebumps just thinking about that. Wow. What a well-deserved recognition of such a remarkable career. So it's been an honor to have you here, Tim. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Greg. Thanks, Ray. Appreciate it.
And Ray, thank you for believing in this vision and for helping to grow the JOY² movement, and for continually introducing us to leaders who challenge our thinking and make us all better. So Tim was another perfect example. I'm grateful we're building something meaningful together. So thank you. And everyone listening, thank you for spending part of your day with us. We know you have choices. So if today's conversation sparked an idea, challenged your thinking, reminded you the kind of leader you want to become, don't let it stop here. Choose one insight from today's conversation and intentionally put it into practice this week. Because leadership isn't built in one defining moment. It's built through the small choices we make every single day. So until next time, live with purpose, lead with courage, and keep choosing joy one day at a time. Cheers. Thanks for spending this time with us on JOY², where joy multiplies and everything gets better. Remember, joy isn't just something you feel. It's something you create, and it's something you pass on. If this conversation sparks something in you, share it, because joy is contagious. What we're building here is bigger than a podcast. It's a reminder and a movement that how we live, work, and lead truly matters. Until next time, live with joy, lead with purpose, and never forget to have fun. Keep choosing JOY². And if you're enjoying the journey, we'd be grateful if you subscribe, like, and share JOY² so the ripple keeps spreading.